Good afternoon, everyone. This is a special report on how to access exemptions for mandatory masking at school. There is no reason that the principal can say no to you, and I will show you, and Chris Sky will show you how before the end of this video, and this one shouldn't be very long, under 10 minutes, I hope. Okay, so COVID-19, sometimes I get things sent to me, and this is an EFTO, this is the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, and this is their communication, and it's titled FAQ, Frequently Asked Questions, number 24, Responding to COVID-19. This was released on February 26th, and it addresses a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm going to focus in on just one, maybe two. Students in my school are exempt from wearing masks, and I can't see any medical reason for it. Can families just decide that their children don't have to wear masks? Now, first, teachers aren't doctors, so just because they don't see a medical reason or no medical reason doesn't make them able to judge that well. It is your child, and if you don't want the only oxygen holes on their body covered all day, then you get to make that call, not the teacher. Okay, here's the answer from the EFTO. Although your school administrator may be able to tell you generally about the decision-making when it comes to mask exemptions, they cannot share medical circumstances of any individual student. And I'll note, they're not allowed to ask the parent either. The parents, the medical information is private to the child, and if the parent doesn't want to share it, they don't have to. And that means if I say my child is medically exempt, my child is medically exempt, period. There is no discussion, none. They cannot ask you for a doctor's note, but tell them that you're willing to get one. And then tell them they aren't going to get one and exempt your child. Okay, but tell them that you're willing to get one, but they can't ask you for one. So you don't need to deliver. Anyway, regardless, back to this. Although your school administrator may be right, the school administrator won't know. They're not allowed to know. Back to this. Students' needs could be accommodated through partial mask wearing, frequent breaks and half days, or alternate PPE, face shields. When masking is not possible, an extra layer of protection, e.g. distancing and implemented impermeable barriers can also be put in place. That's not true. Principals should also consider whether the student should be accommodated or could be accommodated through virtual learning. The principal will put pressure on you to pull your student. That has not happened to me. I just want to be very clear. But this is part of the script. It's like when you call into support and they say, is it plugged in? Okay, can you turn it off and turn it back on again? Good. Next, they're going to do this stuff. Oh, okay, well, your kid's not going to be able to play with other kids. Yes, they will. Can you please outline the loss of activities that people who are unvaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella have to actively endure every day? None? Okay, then how come my kid doesn't have the same level of access that the unvaccinated measles, mumps, and rubella kids get, right? They have no answer to that. It is not possible for them to do that. It is illegal. They're not allowed to do that, okay? This is called teaching the teacher to negotiate. If a parent is don't be silly enough to negotiate with the teacher. Go to the principal. When you talk to the principal, let them know clearly that this is non-negotiable and you will be following through with this, up to and including an Ontario human rights against them. And Chris Sky, again, will tell you to do that later on in this video. But this is programming the teachers, arming the teachers to give them words to say to parents who say, my kid's exempt. Oh, well, if they're exempt, then there will be, you should need to have alternate PPE as to a face shield. No, I don't. They're exempt. When masking is not possible, an extra layer of protection, distancing, impermeable barriers, only if the other kids are doing it, can also be put in place. Principals should also consider whether the student could be accommodated through virtual learning. No, you can just say no. And that's it. That's the end of the discussion. The principal's job is to provide your child with education, period. Back to this. Please note the Ontario Human Rights Commission, OHRC, has indicated that it doesn't consider not believing in masking to constitute a creed, and therefore an exemption should not be granted on these grounds. You can review OHRC's FAQs here. Here is the OHRC. This is the Ontario Human Rights Commission, okay? Ontario Human Rights Commission website. And here it is. They're talking about what a creed is and how masking, so this is number 22, question 22. I do not believe in vaccinations or masks and lockdowns. Does the Human Rights Code exempt me based on creed from COVID-19 requirements like providing proof of vaccination? They cite case law to come to the conclusion. As the Ontario Human Rights is concerned, this case law, blah, blah, blah. So don't do that. Just say they're medically exempt. It's very easy. Don't follow the creed part of it. Just say they're medically exempt. Because breathing is part of your biology. Part of a necessary part, in fact. You need breathing, you need air more than you need water, and you need water every day, right? You need air more than that. So certainly don't go down the creed guideline. But here's what it says. Not all beliefs amount to a creed under the code, and not all creed-related needs must be accommodated in the code. Protected social areas such as employment, facilities, and services, or housing, especially when serious risks to public health and safety are shown to exist, like during a pandemic. The code does not define creed. The OHRC's policy on preventing discrimination based on creed sets out guiding factors based on case law to help organizations and ultimately tribunals and courts make these determinations. This includes considering whether the belief is sincerely, freely, and deeply held, integrally linked to a person's identity, self-definition, and fulfillment, part of a particular and comprehensive overarching system of belief that governs one's conduct and practices, and is connected in some way to an organization or community that professes a shared system of belief. And it says that the OHRC's position is that a singular belief or personal preference against a vaccine or masks does not appear to be protected on the grounds of creed under the code. Well, good thing it's protected under the grounds of medical intervention. Anyway, regardless of whether you believe in it, you can believe in your right to have a free, unobstructed breathing hole on your face. 2 of them, in fact. Here is vaccines for children at school, how to protect children and adolescents from 4 to 17 years old with safe and reliable vaccines. So here are the exemptions. It says the law, unless they have a valid exemption, children who attend primary or secondary school must be immunized against these. So you can access an exemption. And the way to access an exemption for vaccines for any of these things, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, tetanus, diphtheria, etc., meningitis, whooping cough, or chickenpox, is to have these exemptions. And it says under the Immunization of School Pupils Act, your child can be exempt from immunization for medical reasons or due to conscious or religious belief. For medical reasons, you must fill out a statement of medical exemption form that has been signed by a physician or nurse practitioner and submit it to your local health unit. It will indicate the reasons for the exemption, such as blah, blah, blah. For conscious or religious belief, go to your local public health unit to complete an education session that covers basic information about immunization, blah, 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 blah. And once that's completed, you can send your statement of conscious religious belief form signed by a commissioner of taking oaths in Ontario, or taking affidavits, and then you can keep that for your public health unit, etc. But there is a process for this, and that's why I'm going through this. An exemption for masks is not this difficult. Here's the link for the Telegram of Chris Sky that I was telling you to before. It's too big to show you here, so I will bring up Telegram to show you. Here's 2 minutes. It's worthwhile. And this is how to exempt yourself from the masks. It may sound mean. It is horrifying abuse to tell your child that they have to wear a mask for the entire time outside and in that they're at school. It's abuse just to have it on for a short period of time. Look into the Milgram experiment if you don't know what abuse is. If you don't know what the Milgram experiment is, I will explain it. I will explain it later. No, I'll explain it. The Milgram experiment tested the general public's compliance with authority. So they had a person in a lab coat tell another person to ask questions through a speaker of another person in another room. And as they got the questions wrong, to throw switches to give electric shocks to the person. And what they thought was that the people, because after each electric shock, the speaker was supposed to be 2 ways. It was just a recording, but it was supposed to be 2 ways. So every time the person would receive the shock because they got the question wrong, they would say, oh, don't do this. And later on in the experiment, as the person gets closer to 400 volts or something to that effect, the person says, I have a heart condition. If you keep this up, I might die. Stop it, please stop it. The pain, stop it. And what Milgram showed was that people would listen and continue administering the electric shocks as long as there was a person in authority saying, we must continue. The people in authority are the public health. The people administering the electric shocks are the parents and the teachers. And the people who are screaming and saying, please stop this horrific abuse, are the children subject to this. They're the victims. They're being victimized. And it is an abhorrent, horrific abuse to make them do this. It is horrific what's happening. It's horrific, okay? It's horrific. There's no other word for it. Thank you, Chris Sky, for putting this together. Exempt your kids. Exempt your kids. These people are crazy. We should not abuse our children because somebody says we must continue. We must stand up for our children. Stand up for your children. Here's Chris Guy.
So the airport thing is pretty much blown out in the open. The school thing's kind of blown out. I think that needs more popularization. I would like to interview one of the parents. If you know any, let me know.
I will reach out to a few of them. I have them all in my as soon as my inbox gets unblocked. It was supposed to be unblocked today, but apparently it's still blocked. And I literally have hundreds and hundreds of messages trying to get back to. But I will reach out to the parents. I'll reiterate what everyone needs to do for anybody watching. The school and the school boards will try to tell you their policy is you have to wear a mask. And their policy is if you don't want to wear a mask, you got to get a doctor's note. They say that because they know 9 out of 10 doctors are going to say no. And then that way they're making it look like they're not responsible for making you wear the mask, so you don't blame them. It's the complete opposite. They're 100% responsible. They're lying to you. The law states quite clearly anyone is entitled to a medical exemption. They can't ask you what the condition is. They can't ask you for proof of the condition. They cannot ask you for a doctor's note. They cannot tell you have to do online learning. They cannot exclude you from any type of activity at the school. That's law. Their policy can say whatever the hell they want. They can write a policy that says kids can pee in the classroom. That doesn't mean that they're allowed to do it because the law states otherwise. So when you make a policy that's contrary to law, the policy is null and void. They're making these policies to intimidate parents and try to make parents believe they have no choice. So as soon as a parent goes to the school and says, by the way, I want an exemption for my kid, and they say, no, we're not going to give him one, you say, well then, I'm going to file a human rights complaint against the school, and I'm going to name you the principal or superintendent personally, and I'm going to explain in the lawsuit that I explained to you that I want to assert my right for my child to not wear a mask, which is my right, which is the law, and you're willfully violating the law and my child's rights by pretending that your policy or your school board policy supersedes the law. It does not. As soon as they see that complaint and they know that complaint's going against them, they're going to call their school board and say, oh, are you going to protect me from this guy? And the school board is going to say, we can't. It's the law. And then the superintendent or principal is going to call you back and say, your kid can come to school without a mask. And that's what.
Yes. Oh, yep. That's exactly what will happen. And I'll show you the law as well, just to make sure you understand what we're referring to. Hold on. Here is the Section 22 health order in Guelph. This is the Wellington Dufferin Guelph. Every one of these orders has exemptions in different levels. This one, a person shall be exempt from wearing a face covering on the premises if the person is a child under the age of 2. If B, wearing a face covering would inhibit the person's ability to breathe in any way. It's in the law, right there. That law doesn't apply in the school board? It applies. Yes, it does. C, for any other medical reason, the person cannot safely wear a face covering, such as, but not limited to, respiratory disease, cognitive difficulties, or difficulties in hearing or processing information. Or D, the obligation to provide reasonable accommodation under the Ontario Human Rights Code requires exemption from this requirement. And it also says that there's no proof necessary. Hold on. Definitions and scope of the order. An establishment falling within the scope of this order is required to make best efforts in respect of the requirements above. In complying with the best efforts requirement, owners and operators shall not require employees or members of the public to provide proof that they qualify for any of the exemptions set out in Section 1. A school board doesn't get to make laws. A school board doesn't get to say, under our purview, our statement supersedes the exemptions set out in this order. They can't do that. They can't create law. Okay? So I hope that this has been helpful. Please feel free to share this. I hope look in your own communities for your Section 22 order. Usually the language is plain as day. It is very clear what exemptions exist, and it is very clear that they can't say no. Assert your rights. You have them. You have them until we lose them, and they're slipping through our fingers. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.